Okay, the recording has started, and this is the November 12th, 2019 Crossplane community meeting. Let's go ahead and jump into updates with the project and milestones and releases and such. So the first bit of news to share since the last community meeting is that we were able to release our first ever patch release. So we have all the release engineering and automation in place now that with the build automation pipelines and CI systems and all that stuff, such that when we branched for the 0.4 release, we were then able to push more commits to that branch and test them. And when we were ready, go ahead and roll out a patch version that is, just updates to that particular release. So that enables master to move on with new features after we branch for release. So when we're in a code freeze or feature freeze period, that'll really only be in a release branch, and it won't be holding up master from getting new features in. So it's nice to be able to have that ability now to release patches and fix issues that our users and community find out in the wild after we've already released something. So that is good. And so the next release we're working on is 0.5, and that's actually a really short release here. The intent is to have the release out right before KubeCon San Diego. We want to be able to put the release out and have some noise and some new things available going into KubeCon, which is less than a week away. KubeCon starts on Monday here in San Diego. So hopefully everybody has their travel plans and accommodations and such all set up and registered for the conference, because Monday morning, everything gets going down here. So let's take a look at some of the big things in 0.5 here. So it is, as I mentioned, it is a short release. 0.4 was out maybe 3 weeks ago or so, or 2 actually, I think. So 0.5 is just under the length of a month. So there's not a ton of new features and new developments and such that's going in there, but there are some interesting things that we're focusing on and trying to wrap up this week. So the first thing on the list here is that we have been planning an integration of Crossplane with GitLab as a GitLab managed app for a little bit now. And that is all coming together for GitLab's latest release in 12.5, which is nearing the end of its lifecycle now with feature freezes and try to get everything merged in. So basically when this is complete here, or the effort on Crossplane side, which is almost complete, that you'll be able to, from the GitLab UI or from the GitLab project that you have hosted there, you'll be able to have Crossplane provision managed services and resources for you directly from your GitLab projects using your auto Devops pipelines and stuff that GitLab runs. So that's really excited to be able to get an opportunity for Crossplane to actually run in a scenario, more realistic scenario, like CI/CD scenario, where you're deploying your services and your applications and using Crossplane to do some of that work for you. So super excited about that. And Steve is not here today actually because he's meeting with the GitLab folks to try to drive that to completion. Along the same vein of the CI/CD stuff that we were just talking about with GitLab, we're also focusing on integrating with other CI/CD systems. Dan, do you want to give us an update with the guide and the work that you've been doing on integrating with at least Argo CD?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the guide is pretty much ready to go at this point. So for anyone who isn't familiar with what we're doing there, on the last episode of TBS, we had a demonstration, and I've also added support for AWS now. Essentially, what Argo CD is doing is basically just doing that GitOps provisioning that we've demonstrated from using kube control. It's just doing that automatically and watching Git repos. So when you push changes, it'll automatically basically kube control apply any updates to that. But it's nice to have that in kind of user interface, and you can set up by targeting this cross CD repo that Jared has up here. You can set up different environments to already have classes and networking in place and that sort of thing, and then deploy applications into that environment. So there's a PR open on Crossplane right now with the Argo CD guide, and it's pretty much in a finished form. It still needs a little bit of review, I think, before it gets merged, but it's been tested and working and that sort of thing. So that should be a really nice workflow, especially for quickly testing things, just being able to spin up environments really fast, and also getting sort of like a visual representation of that can sometimes illustrate what's going on behind the scenes a little bit more. So that'll be exciting to see.
Yeah, Argo CD is pretty cool from what I've seen. I think it's a nice streamlined experience to be able to, do continuous deployment that's focused on, Kubernetes ecosystem. But yeah, the visualization of all the resources that it's deploying for you through your pipelines and stuff is pretty cool. So what I really like here is that, in 0.4, we had a big focus on being able to enable these continuous deployments in, GitOps type of scenarios. For instance, taking a entire directory of YAML of Crossplane resources like databases and network configuration and resource classes and all those sort of things, and just being able to one command say, hey, apply all this stuff to the Crossplane cluster, please. And so that foundational effort that we did in 0.4 is now enabling us to do all these different integrations with a CI/CD system such as GitLab and Argo CD in 0.5. So we laid the foundation, and now we're able to demonstrate Crossplane being used in these more realistic scenarios of deploying your apps and your services through continuous deployment. So I'm super excited about all that. We're also continuing our effort on maturing and progressing our various types and controllers to the beta level of stability. So we did that for caches and databases for GCP and AWS in 0.4, and we're focusing on Azure right now as well to get Azure up to beta quality. Muafik, do you want to give an update on that for us?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing, it should be V1 Beta 1 instead of V1 Beta 2.
Yep, yeah, good point. That's a typo.
Yeah, so for Azure, the cache is ready and merged. And database right now, I'm experiencing some issues with the API. But by the end of this week, it will be merged as well. So 0.5 will have all three cloud providers, cache and database resources in Beta 1.
Awesome. Is the issue you're having with Azure's DB APIs, is that something we have never seen before, or is it like it's a new scenario?
No. So it's basically how its SDK works. It's kind of like the better quality, high fidelity resources that requires you have an instance view at any time you want, if an operation is ongoing, you gotta see the in progress and all that stuff. But API is a little bit different than other resources, the database API. So I'm struggling with applying the patterns that we know from other providers. But it should be fixed.
I see. So that's a statement that consistency would be a good thing.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So thank you, Muafik. Oops. And then another interesting issue or area of the roadmap here is more improvements to the stack manager. We enabled an initial permissions and security model in 0.4, and we want to take that to some steps further for enabling more fine-grained control of access by and to stacks and their resources within the control plane, and being able to have teams in more enterprise type of scenarios to be able to have fine-grained control and smart defaults, and basically a good user experience around making sure that people in your organization and your team have the right level of access to stacks and their resources. Marcus is driving that effort there. And we will, since 0.5 is a short milestone and this effort is fairly significant, I don't think that we're going to have, we're not going to have a fully fleshed out, finalized security model in 0.5, but we are attempting to make some strides in progress towards that within the milestone here. So we'll figure that out before the release. And thank you for your efforts, Marcus.
Oh, big shout out to Luke for his work.
Luke who? Yeah, Luke Weber is an amazing engineer, and he writes great documents too. A lot of design coming out of that boy's head right now. All right, so that is the kind of the focus on 0.5, the high level items there. The plan is for 0.5 to be out, to be released by the end of this week. KubeCon starts on Monday, and we would like to release on Friday here so that we are going into KubeCon with this brand new release, hot off the presses. We'll have blog posts and some noise around that to talk about what the main high-level features are, and really excited to go into KubeCon, have some new demos to show, and be able to talk to a whole lot of people about what we've been doing and all the efforts there. We can move on to the community topics section. I kind of talked about the GitLab Auto DevOps integration that we've been doing. So that is being wrapped up actively right now. The folks that have been doing that integration effort in the Crossplane community have gotten the end-to-end scenario working. And there's 4 different merge requests that go into different parts of the GitLab system to get approved and put into there. You know, there's like adding it as a GitLab managed app, and then like a database migration, and the Auto DevOps Helm chart updates and documentation. So it's a bit of a process to get this new work into GitLab upstream, but the GitLab team has been really awesome with getting feedback to us, providing suggestions, and kind of shepherding us through the process there. So definitely really happy with the effort from GitLab to enable Crossplane to get integrated in for their 12.5 release. Something else I think is super cool, but I don't think Simon's on the call today, is that CloudScale has started their initial stack. They have a pull request open in their repos for that initial stack that will be able to deploy and manage resources in CloudScale. So there is this pull request here that I have linked in the agenda document that Simon opened, and we are starting to give some feedback. Nick and Dan have already provided some feedback on this pull request, but that's super excited to see another stack getting built by someone, someone else in the community and ecosystem to enable services in their cloud offering as well. So it's not just the big cloud providers; it's has a broader scope and more reach than that, which I'm pretty excited about. Dan, did you have any high-level observations from reviewing that pull request there? Were there any interesting new patterns there, or is it fairly similar to the approaches and architecture that we've seen with other stacks?
Yeah, so to be totally honest, my review was, I guess, maybe a week ago. So there's been some updates since my last review. And so Nick's been driving that a lot lately. Just as kind of like a high level statement though, it did seem to adhere very well with our existing stacks. It seems to be a continued theme that looking at existing stacks is really helping drive the creation of new ones. And that's been true with both this CloudScale one as well as with the packet stack. So I think that's something that's good, that our existing stacks provide a good template. I also think that it demonstrates a little bit that maybe some of our tooling and instruction could use some work, so that you don't have to literally be copying over and that sort of thing, and it makes more intuitive sense naturally. But in general, the people over at CloudScale did an awesome job on this, and I was amazed coming in on my first review of it, and pretty much everything was in the right structure and that sort of thing. They seemed to really grasp what the goals were and kind of the patterns we were following. There was just a couple of small updates. We also had some changes in flight while that was being worked on, so working with them on that was a little bit of effort there as well.
Awesome. Thanks for your support of their efforts there. I think that's super important as we're growing this ecosystem, to be able to provide the right level of support and and resources as well, to be able to enable other teams and projects and providers, et cetera, to build their own stacks and join the ecosystem here. So that's awesome. Cool. Yes, and so then just another note that, KubeCon's next week, and so we think there's a fair amount of folks that are going to be in San Diego, and we are all very friendly people and definitely interested in chatting with anybody about Crossplane or, your efforts there, or your lessons in multi-cloud and what your pain points are, all that sort of stuff, or life in general. We're actually really friendly, so we love to talk to people. Yeah, so hopefully we'll get to meet some new people, make some new friends here in San Diego. And let me know if anybody wants to go out for a surf. I think it looks like there's gonna be a little swell next week, so I'm getting excited already. KubeCon comes to town and the waves come back, which actually there might not be much time for surfing, but we'll make it happen. All right, so we've got a couple of pull requests that we want to bring up here and discuss in this format. Marcus added this one to the top of the list, therefore it must be very important. Marcus, so yes, this, do you wanna bring up what you wanted on this pull request here?
Yeah, I mean, I can just briefly go over.
This is an issue. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so this is an epic of an issue, and it all starts with Luke Weber's design changes around stack roles and some of the RBAC concerns and the scoping of resources. And so anyway, his design introduced a bunch of necessary changes. I'm still, I'm linking in here some more sub issues and creating some issues along the way. But what we'll get here is the result of this epic will be what you were hinting at before as to possibly 05, probably not 05, probably not getting all of these things in 05. But the end result is that users will be able to grant their users, or administrators will be able to grant their users strict access to stacks and operating within different namespaces or cluster scope level. And we're going to sort of prescribe some roles to allow things to work that way. And this will lead into strategies for versioning down the road. So, and additional changes to the way that the roles are assigned and used. So there's a lot of murky water right here. It's like every sentence in that design doc begets an issue.
Nice. And then Marcus, I took a little pass through 0.5 milestone earlier today, and I didn't there's a couple of perhaps smaller scoped issues that might make sense to put into to address in the remaining time in 0.5. So take a look at the issues that are in the 0.5 milestone now around Stack Manager, and see if there's, we could chat more about what the priority should be, or what we can accomplish reasonably before the end of the week.
Yeah, kind of overdue on getting some sub issues broken out on this, so it had some clarity. It's hard to see all the issues that are required from a design doc. You kind of have to take it sentence by sentence and decide if this warrants new work, or if this is represented by something that's already present.
Yeah, that's totally true. All right, Hashdan, you have a design doc open about the integration testing framework. Do you want to give us an update on that one, or is there anything that you need addressed in this pull request?
Yeah, so I just dropped a link in the chat to the actual implementation of the framework. And so essentially what it's doing is allowing us to write table-driven integration tests for our controllers and CRDs. And it's a pretty configurable system. It wraps the env test package that controller runtime uses to implement its tests with Ginkgo. But we kind of wanted to go with the table-driven test, since that's how we write our unit tests and stuff. And if you actually go to exampletest.go, that should give you a pretty good representation of what it can look like. So essentially what it allows you to do is reference a directory of CRDs attach any controllers you want to the manager. And you can actually run this with any cluster. So imptest defaults to actually loading the etcd binaries and the API server binaries. But something that I've been experimenting with, which I think would be really cool, is having something like a GKE cluster running that's basically just used for our integration tests, or even spinning one up using Crossplane, and then running these tests. And what you can do is basically install these CRDs, go through these steps of a test. And I've kind of created these concepts of jobs and tests. So the job would be an environment that you'd want to run tests in. So that would be the controllers, the CRDs, any configuration of the Cube client there, and then run these steps through it. So for instance, in this example, you create a namespace, then a GCP provider, then a bucket class, and then another namespace. And it's just kind of an example here. But there's some concepts as far as like cleanup and that sort of thing. So what I'm hoping to do is get some basic integration tests using this framework into our stacks, which should allow us to move faster with more confidence as we're implementing features more rapidly. And I think it's still yet to be determined what it's going to look like for how often we want these to be run. I don't think they're things that will probably want to be run on every PR, but maybe more of in a periodic manner. So anyway, I'm pretty excited to get this implemented. The design doc right now is a little bit out of date with how the framework looks. But I've kind of been going back and forth with Nick, reviewing the actual framework itself, and then showing some like examples of how we're gonna like inject the config, the cube config, and that sort of thing, and how we want to do that. So hopefully we'll have some basic integration tests in place by the end of this week that we can run on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think any effort and investment that we make into integration tests to, insulate or ensure us from regressions or from new bugs showing up, that validation that you get on a continuous basis at a higher level than just a unit test offer is always a really good investment. I'm really happy to see this. My biggest question is, how do you pronounce this, Dan?
It's Affidid, I'm pretty sure. So the reason why I chose the name, well, first I was looking at like, when Nick created the Angry Jet library for our generation, and he kind of like, it was like a play off Crossplane. So I was thinking of like planes and stuff like that. And since we're wrapping the imptest library, and Affidid is another word for it, is a ramjet, and it's basically a jet engine that uses air propulsion to like propel itself forward. So it's kind of like wrapping around something else and using it to achieve even more functionality. So that's kind of my thought process behind it.
Clever.
And I tried to do like GitHub, /Affidid, and couldn't find much. So, which I guess is not surprising. It's not a very common word.
Not surprising to me. I've never heard of that word in my entire life. I have now been educated today.
It's short for something else. It's like,
I thought it was like an insect, like a katydid, Affidid.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
All right. So great. Thanks for all that effort there, Dan. So then another pull request I wanted to bring up was the design on parent-child relationship labels, or being able to enable the scenario where, given a CRD, like a WordPress instance, you could easily query the entire Kubernetes, the control plane, and find all of the components that are associated with it. We had some feedback, some discussion on this PR, but I think it's kind of stalled out a little bit. Stephen, have you been able to update this pull request in the recent, like within the last 3 or 4 days?
I haven't, but I was actually planning on updating it today. So
awesome.
Should be some updates.
That sounds great. And yeah, I'll try to, I don't think Daniel's here, but I would definitely would like to know what you all had run into for not using the common labels, the upstream recommended labels. So we try to get some feedback from him on that. Awesome. And then one more pull request that is a bit stale here is that Daniel had started an effort around what is our definition of done for a given work item or a pull request. What does it mean to actually be done with it, and being a little bit more formal about that definition. And that's kind of, that's stalled out a little bit as well, but we've gotten some new feedback like 4 days ago. So hopefully Daniel will be able to update this pull request with to incorporate the feedback and be able to get some traction on this and get this merged as well.
You're saying it's stalled, but what do you even mean by done?
It sounds like a chicken and egg thing here, huh?
I am here, Jared.
Daniel, you're here.
Hello.
Hello.
I will, yeah, I saw that you reviewed that again and that I had forgotten to finish that up. So I'll take another look at that this week. Thanks for the feedback.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, I would love to get that merged in there so we could just point at that. And so smart Alex, like Marcus, we could just point at this doc instead.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so then Dan has dropped in the chat that ATHDID is the short name for Aerothermodynamic Duct. Aha. Very intuitive. All right, so that is everything I had on the agenda today. The floor is open for anybody that wants to bring up any community topics or pull requests or anything that they want to discuss that was not in the agenda. All righty. Okay. If there are not any more agenda items, then we can go ahead and adjourn for the week. And the next time that we get together will be down here in sunny Southern California in San Diego at KubeCon. So looking forward to seeing anybody who's able to make that trip and be here. And yeah, let's work on the 0.5 release and get that out by the end of week here and keep this momentum going. Sweet. Thanks, everybody.